Good afternoon, everybody. It's a wonderful simcha to know that this week's parasha is being dedicated by our dear members, Judy and Dr. Joseph Berger, and for a very happy occasion. It's in honor of the engagement of their grandson, Kobe Citron of Boca Raton, to Toby Kaplan of Flushing, New York, and we wish the couple and the whole mishpacha שתזכו לבנות בית נאמן בישראל בניין עדי עד מתוך רוב שמחה ונחת and הצלחה and everything that you want, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give you לטובה. And of course to the parents and to the grandparents and to all the mishpacha, thank you very much for sponsoring the Dvar Torah. At the end of Parshat Re'eh, the Torah speaks about creating a society which is, I would call it a caring society. And in that context, the Torah speaks about various modes of welfare and tzedakah. So it speaks about the cycle of the Shemitah. And in the cycle of the Shemitah, so we all know that there's a certain amount of crops that have to go to the Kohen, that have to go to the Levi, that have to go to the poor person. So the mitzvah of Trumat and Masrot is not only something which is a religious law, something which is agricultural, but it's obviously got ramifications as far as kindness, tzedakah, upholding and supporting various sections of the Jewish people. And in that context, the Torah also speaks about the release of slaves, and it speaks about the release of debt, of Shemitah, and also of tzedakah. And in the context of the tzedakah, I'm going now at a tangent, the Torah quotes a pasuk which speaks about remembering that in our society, in the world that we live in a material, physical world. There's always those that have, always those who don't have. I spoke about this actually in last year's Sidra, set of Shiurim. And it says, the Torah says, Ki lo yechdal evyom mikerev haaretz. You should be conscious and you should know that there will never cease to be poor people who exist in the world. And in other words, it's like a cycle. The Torah is trying to tell us that there will always be people who are poor, and therefore to be very makpi, to be very careful about all the inyanim of tzedakah. But what I want to share with you, and of course there's a connection, but I want to share with you what the Rambam does with this pasuk. The Rambam, of course, is not denying the simple meaning of the pasuk, that there's an emphasis on supporting and taking care of the poor. There will always be those who are poor, even in the times of Mashiach. That's what I spoke about last year. How could that be? But the Rambam uses it in another context, the context of Hilchot Tshuva. And at the Rambam, as we know, divided up the laws of Tshuva into two. There's 4 chapters which speak about Tshuva, chapter 5 and 6, which speak about the principle of free will. And then afterwards, the Rambam resumes the inyanim of Tshuva mi'ava, and Olam Haba, etc. And when the Rambam speaks about the problem of, speaks about free will, which is a great, the basis of tshuva, that a person knows that even though they made a mistake, they erred, they failed, but there's a way in which things can be corrected, and not only to be corrected, but a person can grow and rise to greater heights. In that context of free will, the Rambam deals with the issue of things that were, like in the case of Paro, where things seem to be decreed, like Hashem said that Paro would harden his heart, and how does that then square with the principle of free will? So the Rambam goes into a whole discussion, and he speaks about this inyan of the tension between certain decrees that Hashem made and between a person's individual free will. So in that, the Rambam quotes this pasuk, Ki lo yechdal evyon mikerev haaretz. And there will never cease to be poor people in the world. There will always be those who have and those who don't have. And the Rambam uses it, and I'm explaining it now according to Marov, Rav Alter Hilovitz Nishmato Eden begins Meromim. He explained like this. What is the Rambam proving from this pasuk? He's trying to say this follows. Now, many times people say that, like let's say the Egyptians, let's say, what do you want? Why am I held culpable? This is what society generally is. This is what Hashem decreed that there's going to be in the world. How could I have avoided, as an Egyptian, persecuting the Jewish people? And the Rambam uses this pasuk to tell us Ki lo yerda levyon mikerev haaretz as something that in Shamim, let's say in the heavenly courts, they will use this pasuk to disprove this type of argument, because they will say, "Did you you know that in the Torah it says that there will always be poor people in the world? Did that stop you?" The individual who's now saying that you, because of a certain decree, then you're forced to do A, B, or C. Well, here's another decree. There's a decree that a person, there will always be poor people. Did that stop you from going to work? Did you, despite the fact that there was this decree, did you say, well, I have to be poor because otherwise how could this decree materialize? Your attitude was one. Right? So the heavenly court will say to a person, your attitude was one, that you know what, there is a decree, and I'm going to be part of the people who have got, part of the people who are rich, part of the people who are self-sufficient. As far as the Gzeira of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how can it be? How he's going to have always poor people? There'll always be some segment in society. Okay, I'll leave that up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But what I'm going to do is I want to be part of the rich people. And that's what the Rambam is saying over here. He's quoting this pasuk to say that yes, there is a decree. The decree is there will always be those who have and those who don't have. And this is built into the whole structure of the world, even and including Yemot HaMashiach, Ki lo yevdal evyon mikerev haaretz. There will always be such a thing. And yet you see, people ignore the decree, and they want to be people who do have. And they don't worry about how Hashem's going to work out the decree, but they do what they have to do. And I think that this is not only, I think it applies to many areas of our life. I think many times people say, what would happen if, let's say, all of the people, many times it's whether teenagers or not only teenagers, people say, what would happen if we would all go to yeshiva? So what would happen to the society? What would happen to the doctors and to the lawyers and to the engineers, etc., etc.? So and they use this as an excuse not to go, let's say, to yeshiva for a year or 2 or 3, whatever it is, because they say, how then can society run itself? And this is exactly the point. A person has to make a moral decision on the basis of things of whether something is right or wrong, and not to hide behind the excuse that if everyone would do this, that, or the other, then what will happen to me, or what will happen to society? We have to do what we have to do. And how various decrees and various phenomenon in society, how they pan themselves out, that leave up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is what this pasuk says in the Rambam. Ki lo yechdal evyon mikorev haaretz. There will always be poor people. And just like a person who knows this pasuk is aware that even though this is so, he tries to avoid the decree and leave it up to Hashem to carry out the decree in another way, so it also in any moral judgment and moral action that we have to do, we have to be concerned on the rights and the wrongs and not worry about how this will actually be part of the greater plan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You should have all the Shabbat Shalom.